Let's talk about the razor's edge, that incredibly thin line that separates a cure from a poison or a miracle from a crime. Our guide through this dangerous territory is one of history's most fascinating and controversial figures, the physician, alchemist, and to many, the madman, Paracelsus.
This quote, this was basically his entire life. Paracelsus walked this dangerous line every single day, and he was driven by a belief that was frankly terrifying to people at the time, that nature hides its most powerful secrets inside its most dangerous poisons. And to really get inside his head, we need to start with a story.
So we're starting with the parable of the viper. Now, this isn't just some old tale. It's the key to his entire philosophy. A philosophy so out there, it would end up shattering 1,000 years of medicine and pretty much change science forever.
Okay, so picture this. A mysterious traveler walks into a quiet village. He's not carrying silks or spices to sell. No, he's carrying a big glass jar, and it's filled with writhing, venomous vipers. You can imagine the villagers are horrified just watching him from a distance as he sets up shop right in the town square.
Now, here's where it gets really crazy. He makes this unbelievable claim. He says the snake's venom, the very thing everyone is terrified of, holds the key to both life and death. He's literally proposing that the thing that can kill you can also be the thing that saves you.
And here is the core of his logic. He calmly milks the venom from a viper and explains his whole method. See, it's not about the poison itself, it's about the dose. He says a tiny, tiny drop will actually wake up the body's own defenses to fight off an illness. But a full mouthful, well, that overwhelms the system completely and stops the heart for good.
And then he does it. He uses a single drop to save a child who is on the verge of death. You'd expect everyone to celebrate, right? Well, no. The village is completely split. Some see a miracle worker, sent from God. Others, they see something much, much darker. And that right there, that ambiguity, followed Paracelsus his entire life.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little more. Because that traveler in the story, you guessed it, that was Paracelsus. And that wild idea of his wasn't just a parable, it was the foundation for a whole new science.
This right here, this is it. This is his central theory, the heart of all his work. It sounds so simple, right? But this one sentence was profoundly radical. It basically upended 1,000 years of medicine. He was the one who took toxicology from being the weapon of choice for assassins and turned it into a tool for doctors.
Just look at the difference here. For centuries, medicine was all about the gentle herbal remedies of a physician named Galen. Paracelsus came along and said, nope, this is useless against real diseases. Instead, he started using potent mineral poisons, things like mercury and lead, because he believed you had to fight fire with fire. The academic world was absolutely furious. They accused him of being a quack, of murdering his patients with metallic filth.
And you can bet this had some serious consequences. He was basically branded a heretic, an outcast, forced to wander from one city to the next. But here's the thing about Paracelsus. He cared more about getting results than he did about being popular. He would rather be right and hated than wrong and respected. He totally embraced being the outsider.
So, if you thought using poison as medicine was controversial, buckle up. Let's talk about his most bizarre, most debated experiment, the one that completely erased the line between science and what many people called pure blasphemy.
This is, allegedly, his recipe for creating a homunculus. That's right, artificial life. He actually believed that if you incubated human elements and provided what he called vital heat, which in this case came from fermenting horse manure, you could bypass natural birth entirely. It's no wonder this one experiment became the defining symbol of his complicated identity.
So, what on earth was this all about? Well, to his critics, it was the ultimate sin, a madman literally trying to play God. But for Paracelsus, it was just the next logical step. He thought, if nature can transform elements, why couldn't a skilled alchemist do the same thing on a much bigger scale? To him, this was the ultimate test of his chemical principles.
And that question really gets to the heart of who this guy was. Was he a mystical rogue trying to usurp God? Or was he a scientific pioneer pushing the absolute limits of what anyone thought was possible? For Paracelsus, that line was always blurry.
You know, his reputation as a madman wasn't just about his wild ideas. It was also fueled by his methods and the, let's call it, chaotic environment where he worked. So let's step inside his lab for a minute.
His laboratory was just a place of constant danger. There were chemical fumes everywhere, he'd go for days without sleeping, and he even claimed that the spirits of the elements were speaking to him through the bubbling liquids in his flasks. His behavior was so aggressive and erratic that he drove away almost everyone, even his most loyal students. The man was completely possessed by his work.
But here's the crazy paradox. In the middle of all that madness, all that chaos, he was seeing things no one else could. He was watching how metals and salts reacted with a clarity that was just unparalleled at the time. What everybody else called madness might have just been the side effect of a brain that was working on a totally different level.
So, after a whole life of controversy, exile, and being called insane, what was his legacy? Well, to put it simply, it was monumental.
Think about this. For 1,000 years, Western medicine had been dominated by the gentle herbal tradition of Galen. Then, in a single lifetime, Paracelsus and his aggressive use of chemical poisons just completely shattered that tradition. He single-handedly kicked off the chemical revolution in medicine.
And this really captures his dual legacy perfectly. On the scientific side, he is literally the father of toxicology. His core idea that the dose makes the poison is the foundation of every modern pharmacy. But then there's the cultural side. His bizarre homunculus idea inspired writers for centuries, popping up everywhere from Goethe's Faust to modern sci-fi, becoming the symbol for both the promise and the peril of creating artificial life.
In the end, his biggest contribution wasn't any single cure or discovery. It was a whole new way of thinking. He taught us to value results over tradition and to have the courage to experiment, even when the entire world is calling you a madman.
And so Paracelsus is kind of forever sealed in the flask of history, this complicated, paradoxical figure. Part genius, part madman. He's the guy who taught us that sometimes the greatest cures are hiding in the most dangerous, most unlikely places.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? He dared to look for health in the very substances that usually brought death. It makes you wonder, what are the poisons of our time? What ideas or technologies or controversies are we afraid of today that might actually hold the cures for tomorrow?